Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. Sorry about all the confusion. The flyer should have said 10 a.m. for this one. And I know we've been doing it Tuesdays and Thursdays, but for the next 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to be on Monday and Wednesdays. We got to fit it
O-
in my schedule when we can do it. So,
Okay.
couple things here before we look at the law a little bit. Um, had one today from Dave where the agent said the listing said they were going to do something, uh, but now they say they don't have to do it after we're under contract. And the seller is absolutely right. It doesn't make any difference what the listing says. If you don't write it in the contract, the
Hmm.
listing does not have anything to do with it. A listing is for informational purposes only. Okay.
Okay.
So it's informational purposes only. So it said that they would replace the washer and dryer, but they got it fixed instead. And then they changed the listing. The agent didn't catch the change. Their people are expecting a new washer and dryer. I mean, a new disposal and dishwasher, and they're not going to get it. And the listing agent is right. So remember, a listing is for informational purposes only. There's no guarantee. It does not become part of the contract. So um, don't fall into that trap. I remember years ago there was one that said the owner will finish the basement with the material currently in the basement, and the agent didn't write that in the contract, and the owner returned all the material and did not do the basement. And said the reason they accepted the lower price is because the buyer did not ask for the basement to be fixed, and the seller was correct. Okay, so don't fall into that trap. Another one is date of offer versus in the contract. Should that be the one the buyer chooses? Well, the buyer should always ask for a home inspection. However, if a multi-contract presentation, your person didn't choose date of offer, and another one did, your contract might be the first one kicked out. So just a couple things that came up here this morning that I wanted to alert you to. So we put online a copy of the DPOR rules and regulations as part of the email you received. Hopefully you downloaded that. I want you to go to page 36 of that handout. These are your actual DPOR rules and regulations in case you haven't seen them for a while. I want to go through some things that agents have been getting done and gotten in trouble for. So let's just go through them a little bit at a time. So on page 36, number 11, has everybody found it? Okay. So it starts, number 11 says, actions constituting failing to act as a real estate broker or salesperson in such a manner as to safeguard the interest of the public, including but not limited to the following. So for agents, I want you to go to the next page, 37, and let's start with G as in good. Okay, we're going to start with G. And this one is real important. A licensee failing to submit to the broker in a timely manner all earnest money deposits, contracts, listing agreements, deeds of lease, or any other documents for which the broker has oversight responsibility. If you don't turn it into your broker immediately, and our company policy is 3 days for the deposit, so all the other paperwork should be there also, then this DPOR considers that failure to safeguard the public's best interest. That is a pretty big charge. I've known several times. I've seen a note out on in the email. We got this check for this amount of money. Does anyone know what it's from? That should never ever happen. Okay. You should never put your broker in that position nor your clients. So make sure you get that turned in immediately. Any questions about that one? I know that I hear complaints from administrative assistants everywhere about, paperwork not being complete or turned in. So that's a big one with DPOR. I see a lot of people pay penalties and charge with that one. Okay. H, a licensee negotiating leases for a third party through an unlicensed firm or without a principal broker. You cannot negotiate leases for someone unless the property is listed with our firm, or unless you have your own brokerage, which on the side, which means you'd have to have a principal broker's license, a concurrent broker's license. So don't try to do property management. It's addressed here in other parts of this DPOR, but I know a lot of agents have a tendency to say, you buy this rental property and we'll manage it for you. You can't be a property manager without a firm when it comes to negotiating leases, collecting the money, etc. Now, you can manage a property by seeing that the grass is cut and that type of stuff. But when it comes to leases and all, it has to be through a licensed broker, okay? And so a licensee operating an unlicensed firm or acting as a principal broker, and when you're negotiating leases outside of the firm, collecting money and dispersing it, that type of stuff, you are acting as a principal broker outside of your firm. J, licensee practicing real estate with an inactive or expired license. So if you don't take your continuing ed and you don't pay your fee and your license expires, okay, then any activity you did was unlicensed activity, which is failure to safeguard the public's best interest. It's still the broker's listing and the broker's contract, but you're the one that violated law. And the brokers have a duty to make sure all their people's licenses are active. So we're in a strange period right now with the COVID, and they have extended licenses to 30 days after the governor removes all the restrictions that we have. You still need to get your continuing ed and all in. Be prepared. We offer it online through NVAR. Okay. K, a licensee knowingly providing the broker with an earnest money check from an account with insufficient funds. Paragraph 3 of our contract says that the buyer has delivered a check or will deliver, and that check has to be good. If that buyer tells you, here's the check that you want, but you can't cash it yet, okay? I need to make some arrangements. I need to move some stuff around. Then you are accepting an earnest money deposit check from an account with insufficient funds. That is a direct violation of DPOR rules and regs, okay? So that's why paragraph 3 of the contract says they have delivered or will deliver, okay, the deposit. If they tell you they have to move some stuff around, then you would check the box, they will deliver the check whenever days they can have the money transferred around. So if I say I need 3 days, then write your contract that they will deliver the deposit in 3 days. Or write into your sales contract that you have a fund, you have a check, but it's no good. Okay. How far do you think that contract would go? Well, he gave me a check. There's just no money in the bank. Well, don't get caught in that one. All right. L, a licensing allowing unsupervised access to a home without the owner's authorization. You cannot allow people to go into a seller's home, even if it's vacant, okay, by giving them a code to a combo box or downloading an app and giving it to them and letting them go into a house. You can't open up a house and leave someone there, okay, without the seller's written permission. And that includes home inspections. You can't leave a home inspector in a house unless the seller gave you written permission for them to be unsupervised. So either the listing agent has to be there or the buyer's agent, or written permission otherwise. Okay. I know there was cases where keys were left under doormats because the agent couldn't be there. They had another appointment. They had something else they had to do. So they left a key under a key mat, and the owner came by and found someone in their house and said, "How'd you get in?" And they, left the key under. Well, it's a direct violation of our code of ethics, direct violation of DPOR rules and regs. So make sure you don't do that. M, a licensee failing to inform the broker of a transaction. Technically, that's even a transaction if you were the buyer yourself, okay, and bought a FSBO or something or another. You need to let your broker know, because your broker is responsible for all of your acts, okay? Or when we get this check that we don't know where it came from, okay? Well, that's a licensee failing to inform the broker of a transaction, okay? And not turning the paperwork in.
Hey,
right?
Larry,
Yes.
I have a question
Okay.
regarding your own personal property. If you're going to buy a property or you have one to sell, is there any kind of rules or regulations around that with E&O insurance? I was told that if you sell your own property, then you may not be covered by E&O insurance. Do you know anything about that?
Not if it's not listed with your broker. Okay. If you list it with your broker, I think you should be okay with the E&O, because the broker is now the agent. But if you are the agent for yourself and doing it outside, I think you have a problem. But we'll have to double check with our E&O. I'll make a note that we check and see what our E&O says. But
Okay.
I think you're okay if it's listed with your own firm. Okay. And that's basically why whenever I sell one of my properties or buy, I don't represent myself. I have another agent do it and give them a referral fee, and I still get money. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. I might want to talk to you offline about how to do that. I'll go about doing
Okay. Okay. And so I made a little note about E&O, and I'll check and see what our policy says, and then we'll, later session, I'll let you know.
Yeah, I'm also interested about this subject.
Okay. So the next one here, N, a licensee submitting unauthorized altered copies of a contract or contracts to the broker. Don't ever do that to make a contract. Even if somebody said, it's okay, go ahead and do it for me. No, you can't just go ahead and do it for them, okay? Don't you ever alter a copy. And I've had hearings at the board and ethics where, they said do it. I remember the old days of real estate where we used to all go out and we would meet in the car, meet at the owner's house, and then there'd be a counter, and the agent said, well, I'll go get the initials. And you look at where the buyer lives, and the buyer lived like an hour away. And 10 minutes later, the agent was back in with signed contracts, etc. Initials. Now, how in the world do they do that? Okay. You be careful. Don't do that. And you'll see later, unless you have a power of attorney, you can't sign anything on behalf of someone. All right. Okay. Now, number 12 are actions constituting engaging in improper, fraudulent, or dishonest conduct. Okay. A licensee attempting to divert commission from the firm or sole proprietorship and a direct payment to the licensee or an unlicensed individual is not a party to the transaction. When you do a transaction, even though we're 100% firm, the commission isn't yours, okay? You can't give the money away without the broker's permission. The money has to come into Fairfax Realty. Fairfax Realty disperses the money. And I know this goes on quite often. Now, if you come to Fairfax Realty and say, this is what I want to do, I want to give this much money, whatever, back to the client or reduce it, that's fine, but get it in writing from your manager, okay? You can't just say, I'm giving all the commission away. It has to come into the firm, and then the firm dispersed. B, a licensee fabricating or altering any document with the intent to mislead. If the seller or the buyer did not agree to it, don't you change anything. I can't tell you that too many times. A licensee signing any documents on the client's behalf without first obtaining a client's written permission. That is called a power of attorney. If you don't have a written power of attorney, you cannot sign on another party's behalf. Okay? All they have to do is say, no, I never put that in writing to give them permission, and they're hanging you out there to dry. So don't ever initial or do any of that unless you have a power of attorney. D, a licensee making an earnest money deposit payable to himself or negotiating a check without written authority. These are some tough times. Some people are hurting for money. And I know one or two cases here recently where the agent had the check made out to them by the buyer, and the buyer doesn't know any difference. And they cashed the check because they needed money, thinking that the settlement coming up, they could replace it. That's a loss of license. Okay, that one's going to be a loss of license and a major fine. So don't ever try that. And a licensee misrepresenting ownership of a property. Sometimes that happens unintentionally. If you take and you look at tax records and it shows Mr. and Mrs. own a property, but you go out there for the listing appointment and Mr. says, no, I own this. And you only list their name, that's misrepresenting ownership. You need to ascertain, why don't I need your spouse's signature? Now, they might show you a notarized court order, a property distribution order, that type of thing. Well, that's fine. But don't misrepresent just because somebody told you to. Okay. On page 38, F, a licensee submitting copies of the same earnest money deposit check for inclusion with multiple offers. DPOR has identified these ones we're going to talk about here as things we did in the past that were never right. So I'm in your office. I'm here for a weekend trip to find a house. I write offers on 3 different houses. I give you one $10,000 check. You make a copy of it and attach it to each one of those offers. That is a violation of DPOR rules. You'd need a separate check for each one of those, and that money would have to be in the bank, because if you didn't, then you're accepting a worthless check. So that's why we have in the paragraph 3 of the contract where I could give you a note, okay? Or you present the first contract, it's rejected, then you could present the second one. That check is no longer tied to a property. But it's very specific here. Multiple offers, not multiple contracts. Okay. G, a licensee entering into agreements to be compensated for real estate services while his license is inactive. If your license isn't current, hanging with a broker, and you take a listing or a buyer-broker agreement, then you've taken a listing for compensation. That will be a direct problem. Once again, it is the broker's listing or agreement, but you're the one who violated the law. H, a licensee representing an office, he received the earnest money deposit when he is not.
Hold on
Okay.
a second.
Okay.
You taking the listing for compensation. What is that?
Well, in the compensation paragraph, it says you're going to be paid a total compensation of X%, and you will give co-op broker or whatever. Then that's a listing. That's an agreement for compensation.
Okay. If
So,
that, for example, I've seen on the MLS compensation 0 for the buyer broker. Is it allowed?
Okay. Yes. Well, see what Article 2 of the Code of Ethics says: I must cooperate, but I don't have to compensate. So I have to let you show my listing, but I don't have to pay you any money. Now with Bright MLS, okay, Bright MLS is a separate corporation, so it's not controlled by our Code of Ethics. That corporation says I must offer compensation at least in one field if I want to put my listing into that system. So I could offer zero, to buyer agents, or $1 to everybody. But I have to, in one of those off spots, and we don't have sub-agency, so it should be saying at least $1, but it could be an other, which would be independent contractor. But they certainly can do that now. And when they went to this new system where they said your listing has to be in the system within 24 hours of any advertising, I told them you're going to see a whole lot more listings that have very low compensation or none during what would have been that initial coming soon period. Because how many agents are going to go out and show it unless their buyer can pay them? So I pretty much expected that to happen when they came out with a ruling by NAR and Bright that your listing had to be in the system within 24 hours. So you can't put a sign on a property saying coming soon unless you have it in Bright MLS coming soon status, which means the property can't be shown by anybody. So I figured that was going to be a result of that one. Okay.
It seems to me I cannot put the dollar amount. I'm supposed to put the percentage amount.
No, you can put a dollar amount.
Okay.
Okay. And our listing agreement gives that opportunity also. Think of some of the situations out there. If people are desperate to sell their house right now because of COVID and they've lost their income, and they bought in the last year or two and they overpaid for a house, there's no money left for these people to pay a compensation. Okay. Where's the money going to come from? Okay. It would have to be a short sale. Then you have to go through that process with the bank. So they're just saying, look, if you want to come and sell my house, have the buyer pay you. I don't care how you get compensated, but there is no money. And I think you'll see a lot of that in the future because people still out there buying houses, they're still overpaying for them. And, unless we have like 20% appreciation, somehow a lot of people are going to be short selling their houses in the future. So, okay. A licensee misrepresenting who is holding the earnest money deposit. So when it says in paragraph 3 of our sales contract, the escrow agent to be, and you put Fairfax Realty, but Fairfax Realty saying, no, all checks have to be, all money has to be wired into RTS. We're not physically taking checks right now during this COVID. You need to go back and make sure everybody knows that your contract changed, that the person holding the earnest money is now RTS or wherever you put it instead of Fairfax Realty. So that's what they're talking about, misrepresenting who's holding the deposit. Any questions about those? And we're starting to see a lot of this show up at Depor because of the way business has, been done out there. It's a different way of doing business. Okay, well, the next one is 135-2270, conflict of interest. Okay, conflict of interest. The first one, being active with a real estate broker other than the licensee's principal broker without the written consent of the principal broker. As a licensee, you can't work for more than one firm. If you have a broker's license, you can. So you would have to have what we call a concurrent broker's license. The second one, acting for more than one client in a transaction without first obtaining the written consent of all clients. That's called dual agency or dual representation, but dual agency is the one most people would recognize. You can't represent a buyer and a seller in a real estate transaction. You cannot write the contract for the buyer, get them to sign the dual agency disclosure form, go over to the seller to present the contract and get them to sign the dual agency disclosure form. That form has to be signed by all parties to the transaction and agree to it before you start writing the contract. Okay? Before you start writing the contract. And our sales contract says, if you are a dual agent, that form must be attached to and made part of the contract. Attached to and made part of the contract. So get everybody to agree that they understand what dual agency means. And if you've ever really paid attention to the form, it's telling them that we can't represent any party. You know, don't ask me any questions after this dual agency starts. I really can't answer it for you. I can't, you know, so, you know, we'll do dual agency in another class, but our code is very, very specific. It has to be done with written consent of all clients first. All right.
What's your thought on dual agency?
I don't think we should do it. I'm not telling you don't, but I do not understand what the advantage is to any party. As a matter of fact, it's a disadvantage to all parties because you can't tell the seller then what they should ask anymore, whether they should accept the offer. So if you have a listing, okay, and it's got to be your own listing, right? You have a listing and a buyer wants to buy it. Have them sign the unrepresented party form, okay, and keep representing your seller, because even if they sign a buyer broker agreement, you still can't do anything more than you could if they were still a customer. So you know, if I'm a seller and now you come back to me and say, well, you know, I can make twice as much money here, so you don't really need me as much. That just doesn't sit well with me. So I've never done a dual agency in 44 years. I never will. I have sold my own listings many times in the past, but they were to customers and all the disclosure was done properly, and I kept the seller as my client. So I guess you can say pretty strongly, I don't believe in it, and I wish people wouldn't do it. Okay. Did that answer it?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Your
There's other
own-
way.
I'm
There's
sorry.
other ways of doing it without becoming a dual agent, right? Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you're listing your own property, so how many disclosure you need to put in? I mean,
Well, you have to. The biggest one is that you're a licensed real estate agent.
okay.
Okay, and that's
And-
required by DPOR and state law and code of ethics. And there is a paragraph, and there is a box in the listing agreement for you to check that you're a licensed agent. And this is
Yeah.
even if it's a FSBO.
Okay. No, if you're listening like normal in MLS, do you have you I know you do that in the listing agreement, but do you need any other disclosure to be known?
No, just make sure it's in all advertising and on your sign, even if you're a FSBO, that you're a licensed agent.
Okay.
Okay. In the, you know, in the old days, it said it had to be on the sign, then they did away with that, but then they brought it back. So it's back in our regulations now. Any advertising must disclose that you're a licensed agent. I remember a lawsuit that happened where a lawyer bought a home from a for sale by owner and found out later they were a licensed agent and sued them and won pretty good damages because of the non-disclosure. And their reasoning was, you have knowledge when it comes to marketing real estate and values. The lawyer had the knowledge when it came to the documents. So they actually ruled in favor of the attorney. So make sure you properly disclose that you are an agent, and then any other disclosures that you would do in a regular transaction.
Transaction. Okay, so that's on. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Now, paragraph 3 under this, number 3 under this conflict of interest. Performing regulated activities as a standard agent, limited service agent, or independent contractor for any client outside the licensee's brokerage firms or sole proprietorships. You can't do a favor for someone and list their property. Don't do anything outside of the firm to help someone out because they're a friend or whatever. It's just going to come back and haunt you. It has to be done through your broker. Okay. And I know people say, well, you're an agent. I found this buyer. Can you just write the contract for me? And I'll pay you a few dollars. That's a direct violation of law. You're practicing law without a license to just write a contract for someone. We cannot be paid just to write a contract for someone. Okay, you have to have a listing with them. It has to go through the firm. You can, you have to be involved in the transaction. So writing a contract is part of a transaction, not a standalone action. Okay.
Okay.
The next is improper brokerage commissions.
Hey, you said the writing the contract part of the transaction, but you know what? I know that some of the title company is writing the contract for people without representing them.
Okay, so are they lawyers?
No.
There's a lawyer writing it at the title company, believe me. And lawyers can write contracts. This is DPOR regulation. So lawyers are the one exception to people that can write a contract. Well, you can write your own contract in a transaction as a member of the public, but you can't go out and do it outside of your brokerage for another party. So attorneys can write contracts. Matter of fact, there was a push by the attorneys quite a few years ago that said we would no longer be able to fill out the blanks on a contract, that you would draft, like they do in New York, you would draft a binder that says party A intends to buy from party B this property contingent upon the attorneys drafting the contract. Okay. And then you would have to take your clients to an attorney to draft the contract. We defeated that. We defeated that in Virginia so that we can still fill in the blank, but it has to be under the supervision of a broker. Okay, so you can't do it outside. Okay, but attorneys can. And remember, title companies have an attorney. The title company processes the paperwork. They cannot prepare legal paperwork. So every title company has attorneys preparing the work, and most attorneys own title companies, okay, to do the processing part. Okay, if you were with me in the contract basic class last week, we discussed where if it's going to be a split settlement, you don't have two title companies. You have one title company because all they do is process the paperwork, hand it out, and get people to sign it. So if the seller wanted their own attorney, they wouldn't hire a title company. They would actually write the attorney's name for that title company in the contract representing them. If the buyer wanted an attorney and they selected the title company, well, the title company can't serve as their attorney. They would have to go outside and hire their own attorney. So there could be a title company and two attorneys giving legal advice. Okay. But have you ever been at a settlement where a legal question arose at the table? Did the settlement agent solve the problem, or did they say, you guys have to talk to attorneys or work it out, let me know what you decide and call me back in when you do? So it's very specific what a title company can do. It is spelled out in paragraph 4 of our contract, and we went over that in the contracts class. So if you go back to the YouTube channel that we have and watch last Thursday's session for Contracts 101, we had a pretty good discussion there about that one. Okay. Number 2 here, accepting a commission, fee, or other valuable consideration as a real estate salesperson or associate broker for any real estate services from any person or entity except the licensee's principal broker or supervising broker at the time of the transaction. So if someone asks you to do something outside of your brokerage and you do it for them and they pay you money, that's a violation. Okay. All money for anything that's real estate related has to go through your broker. Okay. If you went down to number 4, I'll come back to 3, but if you go down to number 4, receiving financial benefit from any person other than the licensee's principal broker at the time of the transaction. So probably 35 years ago, I guess, I had a client that contacted me, and their daughter was supposed to be going to college, and they had they gave her money to buy a house, and she was supposed to be making payments. Not only was she not going to college, she wasn't making the payments. So they, when they got the notice, they contacted me, and I worked and got everything worked out and saved the house from being foreclosed on and got it sold for them. And they called my wife and asked what they could do for me, you know. And you know, I like to shoot pool. Not I don't shoot very good pool, but I had a pool table, and I'd go down every night when I got home and hit the balls real hard rather than the dog or whatever. And you know, I came home and my pool table had been recovered, and it was beautiful, really nice felt, and I mean, it was beautiful. And I asked my wife, how did we get the money for this? And she said, well, they wanted to do something for you, so they recovered your table. I had to report that to my broker in writing as financial compensation, and I did. Okay, and my broker then acknowledged the financial benefit that I had received. That's how close I play it to the rules. I'm not going to stretch it. All right, or sometimes people just want to give you a little bonus on the side. Well, I'm still going to be very careful with that. Okay. Number 3, receiving financial benefit from the use of any information about the property, the transaction, or parties to the transaction. So you find out, you talk to these people, you find out that they have financial difficulty. You tell them a figure for their home, and you say, at this price, I'd buy it, and you buy it and then you flip it. That's a direct violation because you receive financial benefit from information about the property. Okay, so I talk about this in my seniors real estate class. I talk about this quite a bit in my seniors real estate class, where if a senior calls you and says, I'll be happy to get this amount of money, and you just go ahead and list the property at that amount of money, and it was worth more without getting something in writing, the family members are going to come back and they're going to claim you received financial benefit from the information of the property. So anytime a senior says, I'd be happy to get this amount of money, you better make sure you have a signed written market analysis of the property, etc. Okay. Number 5, receiving financial benefit or other valuable consideration for any work or service related to the transaction. And that's like that pool table thing. And hopefully everybody knows number 6, net listing. You can't take a listing where the seller says, "Give me this amount of money, you keep the rest." That's Principles of Real Estate 101 exam question, right? No net listings in Virginia. Now, the next one is 135-2290, improper dealing. Number 1 is offering real property for sale or lease without the knowledge and consent of the owner or the owner's authorized representative on any terms other than those authorized by the owner or their representative. You have to have a written listing. Someone can't just tell you, well, just bring somebody by. If they buy my property, then we'll enter an agreement. All right. Or telling, if you're representing the seller and another agent calls and says, what do you think the seller will take? The only answer you can tell them is what? List price, right? You can only tell them list price, or I'll take your offer to the seller for consideration. The same way with any owner. Even if the owner said, well, I'm considering lowering the price. Well, you can't relay that information unless you have it in writing from them. Placing a sign on any property without the consent of the owner of the property. I remember years ago, my father had a piece of property out at Dulles Airport, right at the back gate. Actually, it was my second sale in real estate 43 years ago. We bought 5 acres of land for $4,000. And I went by one day, and lo and behold, there's a for sale sign on his property. And I called my dad and I said, who's this agent that has your property for sale? He says, well, somebody called and said, if they had a client, would it be okay if they brought me an offer? And I said, yes. I said, well, did you give them permission to put a sign up? And he said, no. So I called the listing broker and we got a laugh over it. And I said, you can laugh as long as that sign's gone by tomorrow. Otherwise, my father's going to report it. So be careful with that one. Page 40. Number 3 at the top, causing any advertisement for sale, rent, or lease to appear in any format or medium without including the advertisement, the name of the firm, or sole proprietorship. That is LinkedIn, that is Twitter, that is Facebook, okay? That is anywhere, all right? The sign that goes in the yard has to have the firm's name. If you looked at the advertising part of DPOR rules, which you now have a copy of, if you downloaded it or printed it, it even says that it has to be just basically discernible. They have to know it's a broker. So I know that a lot of teams have their names on signs, etc., but it has to have the firm's name and phone number on that sign, on that advertising. And if you put anything in a LinkedIn or Twitter about any property or listing or anything like that, it requires the disclosure. And DPOR in Virginia has a one-click rule. Must have all these disclosures on the main page or one click away. Okay?
Okay, can you tell me one more time? I didn't get it. If, for example, you put the link of the house on your Facebook, what else should you provide?
Well, the link, you should have your broker's name in that post, okay? But if not, a link back to where a page where all those disclosures are made.
Okay, if the link, somebody advertised the property and I put the link of that property not belong to our agent.
No, that's not what we're talking about. You shouldn't be advertising somebody else's property without the broker's permission. This is not for you to go out and take somebody else's property and advertise it. You can have it on your website simply because of the agreement all brokers have, but you can't use somebody else's property to advertise. Seller didn't give you permission to do that. Okay, this is for your own listings or company listings.
Okay, only.
Okay,
only.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, misrepresentation and omission, 135-2300. Okay. Using bait and switch. I know of agents, there was a sign that I saw in a subdivision out in Centerville that had been up so long, I mean, so long that the sign had literally bent over like this. The agent owned the home. The agent had no intentions of selling the home. They were trying to generate calls to get leads. That's called bait and switch. Be careful, okay? Number 2, failure by a licensee representing a seller or landlord as a standard agent.
Larry, about bait and switch.
Okay.
I noticed one listing and I know that the agent received the multiple applications and she still keep this property under active status instead of pending or application accepted, something like that. Is it?
That's probably not bait and switch. That's just probably an out-and-out violation of Bright MLS rules. So, there's a button that you can push on Bright to reporter and that would probably be changed. But I'm not sure that's a bait and switch. A bait and switch is when you don't have the item available, period. Okay. That's probably more of a, don't know to change it type thing. Because if if it's in Bright, most people that are going to be going through an agent for Bright, not to, so I don't know. I don't know if I'd call that bait and switch. That's probably just poor.
But you know what? Before we had one option when the person received multiple applications for the rental application, for example. And usually the agent put the status application registered. But
Well, application, well,
for now, we don't have such option.
yeah, I don't know that much about what Bright does anymore. Yeah,
But
I don't, but I don't think that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
getting complicated because people are asking me, listen, it's still active. Why we cannot apply? When I called to a listing agent, she got 3 applications.
Yeah. They could probably still apply, but they already have
Yeah,
3.
but the people are losing, first of all, time, second of all, money, and third of all, emotions.
Yeah.
And they thought probably that I'm the lying. That's
Yeah, I know it's frustrating, but I don't think it's a bait and switch technique thing.
okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Larry,
Yes.
sorry, question
No
of
problem.
that. This is regarding the Bright. Will there be any violation if, like, for example, I put the property before on a coming soon, and then it hasn't been activated, and someone made an offer, but it was the seller who accepted and let the what's this? The buyer go inside the property. It wasn't me. So, and then they just asked me, like, they accepted it and I put it under temp off. Should I be, is there any violation on that, or should I wait until it's closed already, and I will change it to a closed status?
Well, it's a violation of the rules. You should have made sure the owner knew that they could not allow anybody in the property. So, but that would be a Bright MLS violation. Okay.
Yes,
But
I did inform, but the thing is, like, the buyer, like, I think she lives in that property before and she knows. So, I mean, I did not show it, and I told my client, like, hey, you cannot show anything if it's under, if
yeah.
it's coming soon. And then they did. So, will
But who
that be
wrote?
taken against me, or should I
Well,
ask a written permission, a written consent from the buyer, from the seller, that they did it themselves?
yeah, I would have something in my folder to protect myself just in case, because it's when it shows up,
Okay.
active and immediately under contract, they're gonna know.
Okay.
Okay.
All
Yeah.
right. Thanks.
Okay. Number 2 here: failure by a licensee representing a seller as a standard agent to disclose all material adverse facts pertaining to the physical condition of the property. Okay. To a prospective purchaser, we have to tell known material adverse facts about the physical structure of the property inside the property line, correct? You as an agent, if you know, you have to tell prospective buyers. That's to prospective buyers, okay? Number 3, failing as a licensee to tender promptly to the buyer and seller every written offer, counteroffer, and every written rejection to purchase, option, or lease obtained on the property involved. When you get multiple offers on a property and the owner rejects contracts, you need to write on that contract, reject it, have the owners initial it, send it back to the other side, okay? DPOR rules require that. And I know it doesn't happen, but technically, until that contract is rejected in writing by the seller, it's still out there, okay? Same way with a buyer's agent. If they reject the seller's counter, write on that reject it. Or if they're not countering, write on there reject it, have them initial. Otherwise, that's still an active contract. And we had this happen when I first came to work with Fairfax Realty 10 years ago. An attorney actually was going to bring a lawsuit because the contract didn't say reject it, and they, he felt like he still had an offer out there. So, you know, unfortunately, the agent was very ill and passed away before anything came of it. But, you know, the law requires the written rejections, but it doesn't happen very often. I know. Okay. Number
Larry?
4. Yes.
I have a question regarding the lady's question about the coming soon status. What
Uh-huh.
happens if it's incoming soon status and say a buyer didn't even see the property and they wrote a contract sight unseen?
Well,
And
I would be telling them, I'd call the owner and say, we have this offer, but, you know, according to the agreement you signed, you know, it, you know, shouldn't be presented until such and such time. But if an owner wants to see it, I think they have a right to see it.
right, because we are obligated to present all offers, right? No matter when they come in.
Well, yeah, but you know, they agreed in their you know, listing that, you know, that it would be this way. And you know, NAR's position is, okay, NAR's position is it's a fair housing violation if we're not making full exposure to everybody that should have an opportunity to see it. Because there's some groups, you know, that you would go to first. Now, it can always be marketed as a private exclusive. Okay. Well, why was it put in coming soon status in the beginning?
Maybe
And
maybe the seller was preparing the house and didn't want to show it, but wanted to, you know, generate interest in it, letting
okay.
people know that
And,
it will be coming to market.
and that's the purpose of it. And for it to not come to market would not be in the best interest of the seller technically. So that's what they were acknowledging in that listing agreement. So that wasn't, and that's the purpose of coming soon, to generate interest for the future, not to eliminate other buyers. And that's what they're saying is it's not giving everybody an equal opportunity. So it could be a fair housing violation was NAR's take on this coming soon thing.
But if we have such lack of inventory in the market, and if somebody, you know, wants to get in say a particular area, location, and they see a property that comes on the market and they want to write on it, I mean, what do we do in that instance?
Well,
we present the
so,
offers, right?
so the, I'm going to maybe not be the most popular with this answer. I would tell them that the owner is not considering any offers until that day, because if the owner goes ahead now and does that, but they were building up the interest for X number of days, how many other offers would they have gotten then? So it says we have to promptly, you know, tell them about it, but that they don't have to accept it at that point. It's a tough situation. I grant you, and I don't think it's in the best interest of the owner to accept one doing coming soon, because you are building up that interest. But it says here that we have to promptly promptly tender to the seller every written offer. So
Correct.
so I'm going to take it to them, but I'm also going to remind them of the agreement they signed.
Okay.
Okay. And why? And we don't have the form anymore for coming soon. I used to like that form. Remember that coming soon form that
Yeah.
we used to have them sign? It wasn't in their best interest, etc. I wish they hadn't done away with that. They did away with it because of the new rules. But you know, we can't make a seller wait.
Right.
I grant you that. Okay. So I mean, the worst case situation is you get fined.
Oh, Larry. No. You made me. You made me laugh, Larry. No, but in my case, the property was under rental. So
Yeah,
at the time
yeah.
that I put it under, you know, under a coming soon, the list is not yet locked. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'll prepare for that. No, I'm not.
And what I was told in a meeting the other day is Bright is not finding the people the $5,000 yet. They're giving them warnings. But you know, the first offense to Bright for a coming soon violation is $5,000 fine.
Oh my word.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever read the fines? How much commission did you make?
Right?
Good enough. Anyway, all
The
right.
whole commission.
So discuss that one with the owner.
Okay.
Uh,
I let
But
them
so
sign
far,
some.
they, what I understand, they just giving letters of warning, don't do that.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So number 4 here, under misrepresentation and omission, failure by a licensee acting as an agent to disclose in a timely manner to the client all material facts related to the property. And remember now, this one's dealing with your client. Number 2 was dealing with a customer, somebody you're not representing. You have to tell them no material adverse facts about the physical structure of the property. Number 4 says, tell the client, your client, property or concerning the transaction. Anything you know that would affect the transaction, you need to tell your client, okay? And the failure to do so would constitute failure by a licensee to exercise ordinary care as defined in the brokerage agreement. So don't hide information about the transaction from your client. Keep them completely informed. That's like, I guess that one would sort of be like they have an offer that's in negotiation back and forth, and you're the agent that wrote the contract, and you're looking at making double commission, and then all of a sudden another agent wants to bring another offer in. Well, don't hide that from your client. Tell them, just, do you want to see this offer? They want to put it together and bring it to you. All right, but you have to keep them informed of everything about the transaction. And none of these are a problem as no one reports you to DPOR. Okay, but this is the way you should be working. Okay. Number 5, notwithstanding the provisions of this subdivision 4 of this section, a licensee acting as a dual rep shall not disclose to one client represented in the dual representation confidential information relating to the transaction obtained during the representation of another client in the same dual representation. So, the buyer will give the seller more money. You discussed it, but you're representing both parties, and the seller says to you, will they give me more money? Well, you couldn't tell them because you're a dual agent. But if you weren't a dual agent and you kept the buyer as a client, as a customer, and that buyer would pay more, you could tell the seller, I think they would probably give you more. But you understand that if you counter this offer and they change their mind and won't give it to you, you have nothing. But if you sign what you have, we have a deal. So once you're a dual agent, you can't tell either side anything about anybody or any situation. And the law even says, look, if you guys want representation, you both have the right to go out and hire somebody else and do all the stuff I can't do for you now. Well, why get into that situation? Okay. A lot of agents say, well, I want to make sure I get both sides of the commission. You don't have to be a dual agent to do that. You have a listing agreement. It says you get all the compensation. Okay. So this dual agency thing at one time was the second highest number of alleged violations at DPOR. Okay. 6, failing to include the complete terms and conditions in the real estate transaction. Sometimes some of the contracts I have seen written sometimes don't even come close to being an offer. I had one that came in on one of my listings, and it was so bad that we sent it back to the other side and said, and I highlighted everything that needed to be filled in, and we sent it back, and he said, you're just trying to stall to try to get another offer. I said, you better take this to your broker and see if your broker can help you. I mean, we wanted to deal with them, but you got to be able to fill out a contract, okay? And that's what our Contract 101 class on Wednesday is. We're just picking up and going paragraph by paragraph, line by line, okay? 7, failing to include any application or offer to purchase identification of those holding any deposits. And then number 8, knowingly making any false statement that would influence the lender. You can read that. And knowingly making any material misrepresentation, that's a catch-all. Tell the truth, I guess. Okay. Now let's finish up with improper delivery of instruments. On page 41, failing to make prompt delivery to each principal to a transaction legible copies of any written disclosures required by the law, listings, lease, offers to purchase. Everybody has to receive a copy of anything they sign when they do it. And number two, I find to be pretty important, failing to provide in a timely manner to all principals to the transaction written notice of any material changes to the transaction. Written notice of any material changes. And that includes changes to the condition of the property. The owner would have to tell a change in the condition of the property if it's, major problem with the property. And failing to deliver to the seller at the time of the real estate transaction is completed a complete and accurate statement of the receipts and disbursements of monies. And that's basically when a contract doesn't go to settlement. If it does go to settlement, it says if a HUD-1 disclosure sheet is given to them, then that relieves us of the responsibility. But if the transaction doesn't settle, then they have to be given written and notice of what happened to the money. And those are the things in the law. I mean, the whole package of law there, but those are the ones that I see agents having problems with and not understanding. Any questions? Any questions about anything else today?
I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, this is regarding a new not new development. This is just one builder in Arlington. This is a new house. Should I ask, Larry, should I ask an occupancy permit from the builder?
He can't sell it without it, but yes, you need an occupancy permit.
Okay, so even if, because I asked the lender, and according to them, they do not require occupancy permit. I thought all the while that the lender requires it, but that's only
Not the lender.
No, but you know what? If it's a builder, they do, okay? But in this case, the builder, we have our own financing, and it's not builder's financing.
Yeah.
So should I, as an agent, require for an occupancy permit?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. But I did not specify it on the contract. What is it?
No,
that
but the builder knows they have to have an occupancy permit. The county's not going to allow anybody to occupy without it. So they'll have their finals and their occupancy permit.
But I checked with the Arlington County. I checked all the permits and they pass everything like that. But when I called the zoning, it seems that they have not acquired the occupancy permit yet.
Well, when's settlement?
Settlement is like August 7.
Oh, well, you're not even close to getting an occupancy permit. Because they need to complete everything in the property, and the county comes out and final inspects everything before they do the occupancy permit.
Okay, so
you still have time.
Okay, all right. So I will just email them, right? Even if I did not mention it in the contract.
Yeah, just ask them when they think they would have an occupancy permit.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I appreciate everybody coming back and joining me at noon. Sorry about the mix up with the email and all for the time. Wednesday, if you're joining me for the continuance of the Contract 101 class, we will be meeting at 11 to 12. So the rest of the times will be 11 to 12, but we'll be doing Mondays and Wednesdays for the next several weeks. Okay.
Hey,
So
Larry.
Ask Larry will be on Mondays, and the Contract 101 and whatever we do will be on Wednesdays.
Larry?
Yes, somebody. Yes.
If we want to reach you to ask you a question offline, how do we get in touch with you to do that?
Shoot me an email, brokerlarry1@fairfaxrealty.com.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Hey, Larry, I have a quick question.
okay,
I have a client that they got their financial or they got their loan approved, not just pre-approved. Like their lender does a program where they can get approved even before they have a contract or a ratified contract on a house. And lender was saying that, or they were even suggesting that I could even remove the financial contingency. However, in their conditions for that loan that is approved, it requires appraisal to, it still requires it to be appraised. So can I remove the financial contingency and keep the appraisal?
well, the appraisal contingency is a separate contingency. It's on the same form, but it is a separate contingency.
Okay, so you can do
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I do not understand how that lender gave them pre-approval. How did they give them a closing disclosure for them to review?
So they gave a approved loan in condition or with a conditional approval with 4 things being met, the title being clear, appraisal meeting, and then there were 2 other things, or having a ratified contract and one more
Yes.
thing.
See, because
Um,
they can't give loan approval without a ratified contract, because
Right.
it's the 6th piece of information required by TRID. So once they give them that contract, within 3 days, they have to issue to them a loan estimate. And when they get the loan estimate, you know, that shows them what their cost will be. Most lenders can sit down with you and get most of the paperwork and tell you you're approved, and that's fine, but you have those contingencies. So I probably would not remove the financing contingency until you had to. But you're saying they
Okay.
don't even want to put one in the contract, or?
Well, so I mean, the market is crazy right now. We put in like 5 offers for this client, and none of them gone through. And like this client is ready to pay more, but it's just that the sellers are asking to remove contingencies, and people are coming in with no home inspection, all this
Well,
stuff.
as long as your buyer is okay with it, I'd protect myself, get something in writing. There's an
Right.
adverse. Have you used that adverse consequences form?
I saw that, and we haven't gone forward with this idea yet. I wanted to run it by
If they're going to
you
do
or
it, then
someone else to see
if they're going to do it, then use the adverse consequences form to get them signed, and just keep it in your folder. It's not something that goes with a contract. It's for you to keep in your folder.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, great. Then I will see, hopefully, some of you back on Wednesday when we continue going through the contract. Have a good day. Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.